St. Louis Acura was the #1 Acura dealer in Missouri in 2021, and we were the 17th in the nation for Acura sales volume. We sell over 100 pre-owned vehicles monthly, and we service all of the makes and models that we sell. We are waiting for verification of our 30th Acura Precision Team Award, the only dealer in the nation with so many awards for customer satisfaction and dealership performance. We have 300 pre-owned vehicles in stock right now. St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.
Hey, welcome back into Weekend Joe, driven by Munganass St. Louis Acura, Munganass Alton Toyota here on ClaibsOnline.com. Joining me now, I guess, broadcaster extraordinaire. You can hear him all up and down Route 55, whether it's in St. Louis or up in Chicago. He is Chris Rongey, and he joins us now. Chris, what's going on?
Joe, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. You know what? It's always so entertaining to me when the NFL season ends and we start to play the game of who is the most incompetent franchise in all of football. And, the last 6 years now, not having a team in St. Louis, it's kind of fun to watch it from the outside. And when the Bears held their press conference this past week, I knew we had to talk about it on the show. I just covering Chicago sports for as long as you have and seen so many dumpster fires as you have up there, where would you rank what you saw on Monday with that conference after the firing of Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace?
Oh, it's as bad as it gets. I don't think it's the worst I've ever seen. I think the only thing that softens the blow of that apparent incompetence is the fact they have a quarterback that is promising, right? So you're watching, I don't know, like I'm watching the press conference and I'm thinking, okay, this guy, I don't know if he knows what he's doing. He said multiple times throughout the press conference that he's just a fan. He's a football fan. He's not really a guy who understands the game. Like, I'm paraphrasing, but he did call himself a fan. And this is the person who is in charge of finding the new general manager and the new coach that are supposed to turn Justin Fields into a star. And that's the #1 thing the Bears have to do, is make Justin Fields a star. So they got to get these hires right. And when you watch that press conference, I don't know, like the Dan Campbell going to bite kneecaps and, like that was funny. That wasn't like a direction of the organization. And then you watch it and go, oh my God, these guys don't know what they're doing. We're in trouble. They're going to waste this kid. Like it's just a completely different vibe. And the amount of things that he said throughout, like, first of all, when they asked him about the prerequisite for the new general manager or coach, they asked him, in fact, they asked the question and then followed up, like, want to make sure I heard you right here. Is the guy or guys or people who come in, is it a prerequisite that they have to believe in Fields and have to turn him into, the franchise quarterback? And his response was non-committal. And maybe it's just him wanting to get he wants to hear what the people coming in to interview say. And maybe that's all it is. He doesn't want to color what they're going to say, right? I mean, I guess that's the only thing, but isn't it obvious that that's the one thing that is the most important to the franchise right now? And he wouldn't even admit to that.
Yeah, and just to, on top of that, it was the stuff that's in-house right now with building this team. And then he has to address some of the stuff that was said by a former Bear, a Bear legend in Olin Kreutz, that he has to address that. And instead of taking the high road with it, he really just seemed to dig even deeper as to throw him under the bus and calling him a liar.
So I don't know if you saw what started this, and I was actually on with Kevin Wheeler on KMOX last week, and I was about to bring this up, and we ran out of time. But Olin Kreutz, former center for the Bears, very, very well liked in town, and we thought the organization liked him, and I'm assuming most people do aside from McCaskey. But he told a story about how the Bears, after he was done playing, offered him a job to help coach the offensive line, and the offer was for $15 an hour. So he told that story, and everybody was like, what? Like $15 for you? Like you're going to ask a former NFL player to come work for $15 an hour? You're not a greeter at Walmart. What are you talking about here? And so somebody asked McCaskey in the press conference about it. And McCaskey's response was, well, I've learned to take everything that Olin says with a grain of salt, essentially calling the guy a liar. And then Olin went back on the station on 670 like an hour later and said, no, that definitely happened. I called Harry Highstand, who used to be the O-line coach, and asked him, and he confirmed the offer. So McCaskey must have not known anything about it. It's just like the last thing you want to do is call out one of your former players who is very well liked in a press conference. It's just when you're already failing. But that's the thing about the Bears, and in particular management and upper management. They're very tone deaf when it comes to what looks good, what sounds good, the things they're supposed to say. I mean, there are a lot of times that a press conference and that's probably why he doesn't talk much publicly, because when he does, it turns out like this. And that was an hour-plus press conference, and I can't believe they let it go on that long because he sounded so ridiculous most of the time. And I don't know if you heard it, Joe, but he started off by he had a prepared statement, and he talked about Jeff Dickerson. You know Jeff Dickerson, who passed away a couple of weeks ago, NFL reporter. He had he's my age. He had colon cancer, and he had lost his wife a couple of years prior to cancer. So they're both gone. They have this 11-year-old son who's now without parents. And McCaskey started the press conference talking about Parker Dickerson, the son, and he's like, and he's a young boy, and there were these young kids that chanted "Fire Matt Nagy" at a football game just recently. Like, what is this transition? Like, how does one thing have anything to do with another? Like, why are you invoking Jeff Dickerson and his son to make a point about Matt Nagy getting fired at a high school, or getting chanted at a high school football game? Just totally tone deaf and ridiculous.
It's amazing that, and it surprises us every time. And at some point it won't, how tone deaf these people are that are running billion-dollar organizations. And it happens in every sport. It happens, it seems like, at every level of that. I mean, when you were bringing up just the disrespect that it seems like they're showing to Olin Kreutz, it reminded me, you weren't in St. Louis yet at the time, so I don't know if you heard the story when Steve Spagnuolo, I'm sure you heard it at 101 at some point, when Steve Spagnuolo came in to the Rams and just took down all of the Greatest Show on Turf stuff that was there at the practice. He was like, now we don't need to remember any of it. And it's just like, why would you discredit that memory of a great time in the organization just to put your own footprint out here? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And doing it one way or another wasn't going to win or lose him any more football games than what he ended up doing.
And I understand the idea of coming into a new situation and saying, we need to forget about the past and we have to move forward here. And maybe nobody understands that better than people who follow the Bears, who are constantly invoking 1985. All they do is talk about the 85 Super Bowl. And a lot of us are tired of hearing it because, okay, that was, I was like 8. I barely remember it. Let's move on. Let's win another Super Bowl. Right. And so I do get that, but you can't just totally forget all of those guys and their contributions. Like, it is good to have the reminder up in the building. Hey, this guy helped us win a title, and so did this guy. You should always remember that stuff. So some of what Spagnuolo did is super weird. And I fully understand that coming from Bears perspective for a team that will not stop talking about a championship that happened like 40 years ago. It's absurd.
Is there an organization, because everybody, those Bears fans you're talking about are just still waiting for Mike Ditka to come back and coach the team. I can't think of an organization that does that in any sport, where they look back at a coach they had. I mean, Bulls fans aren't sitting up in Chicago waiting for Phil Jackson to come back on the sidelines. They're, waiting. You don't hear that same love for a guy who won 6 titles that you do for Ditka that just won 1. What's the difference there between them?
It's just grabbing at straws. That's all. There's been so much failure, and that's not to say the Bears haven't had good teams, because they have. I mean, they were in a Super Bowl in 06, which is still a pretty long time ago, but they were in a Super Bowl. They had a Super Bowl caliber team in 2010, I think. I mean, they lost in the NFC Championship game, but that team was pretty good. And the team they had with that world-class defense a few years ago in the first year of Trubisky, that was a pretty good team. So I mean, they've had good years along the way, but I think it's that, and I don't think most Bears fans are clamoring for that anymore. I think they're over the Ditka thing, but that's the last championship they remember. It's the only, for most people, it's the only one. And so I think they just look back to that and go, well, that must be the formula. You need to have a guy like that. And obviously it's modern football, so you don't need that anymore. But the Bears just, they cannot get out of their own way. They can't figure out a way to maximize the talent they have. And I'll be curious to see what they do here. But the problem with the press conference, and we started talking, about that, is you seem to have people in charge that don't really know what they're doing. And I know that you might be listening thinking, well, how can you say that? I mean, they've been in charge of this organization for a long time. Yeah, but the guy is the son of the owner, so it's not like he got that job out of merit. He got it because he's a McCaskey and his mom owns the team. So yeah, it's almost like royalty in a sense. But listening to that press conference, there's a guy, Ted Phillips, who's their president, and McCaskey is this is just an indication of what we're talking about. They're doing the press conference and they are, I don't know, 15 minutes in or something. And he's talking about how Ted Phillips, who is not really considered a football guy either, is not going to be making these decisions. And nobody knew he was on the Zoom call. And then suddenly they throw to Ted Phillips and everybody was like, oh, he's there? Nobody, I don't know. It was just, we thought it was a George McCaskey press conference. And here's the president just idling by, listening. And then they throw it to him at one point, and everybody was like, what is going on here? You didn't even tell us that this dude was listening in to take questions? It's just, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing, but I have no hope they're going to get this right.
Virginia McCaskey turned 99 years old last week. How involved is she with anything that's going on there?
I don't know. I mean, she said her quote to George was, "I am very, very disappointed." So I don't know. Is she just a mom telling all the kids that this isn't good enough, guys? You're going to have to do better. I don't think she's not making football decisions. I think she's just delegating, but I don't know, man. It is such an absurd situation. And that's the thing. It would be one thing if they had, if they still had Mitch, I guess, or, Nick Foles was the starter moving forward. You'd probably be like, okay, whatever. I'm not happy with the way things are going. But the fact they have this quarterback who I believe and a lot of other people believe could be really good. He just has to be nurtured right. And if they get it wrong, it's going to be a huge setback for them, years setback. So that's where, watching the situation from the outside, it feels like this is just not going to be good, because they and I have said this, and maybe it's hyperbolic, but I think this is their most important offseason, maybe in the history of the franchise, because they have to right now, not next year, not the year after. They have to get the GM and the coach right, because they have this kid. And for the first time, they have drafted a quarterback that people generally think is going to be a star. When Trubisky got drafted, I'd say 75% of the reaction is, what the hell are they doing? And why did they move up one spot for that? So this is so important to them. And I have no confidence they'll get it right.
So you have 7 job openings right now. I guess if we're assuming the Raiders job is still open, with an interim head coach right now, 7 openings in the NFL. Where would you rank this Bears job as far as the attractiveness?
Well, I know that a few years ago, when they were looking for a new general manager in Ryan, so it was about 7 years ago, I guess 8 years ago. There were a couple of guys who ended up going elsewhere that the Bears requested to interview, and they said no. It wasn't good. But at the time, you have to remember They didn't have a quarterback. They were coming off some bad seasons, and the defense wasn't in good shape. So there was nothing really good that you could come in and say, well, I can build on this. This is different, though. Like this, I think they have to be one of the more attractive jobs, if not the most attractive job, because it is, number one, it's the Bears. And I think that does carry a lot of weight because there's going to be something for the guy or person who comes in and turns that around. It's the Chicago Bears. It's one of the most storied franchises in football. So there's a lot of name value there. And it's a big city. So there's going to be somebody who wants to come in and do and does something with that. But the most important thing is they have a quarterback to work with. It's not like, they probably should have won a Super Bowl with Cutler, but it's not him. And a lot of people didn't believe in him. But Fields, this is different. This is the first time that I can remember they have a situation where you have an opportunity to come in and mold this kid and turn this franchise around, and then you're a hero. Then you're Theo Epstein. Then you're Joe Madden. Like, you have an opportunity to do that. So I think that is really attractive.
You mentioned it being in a big city. There are the rumors that they're going to move out to the suburbs, out to Arlington Heights. So how much do you take? How seriously do you take those?
Oh, that's happening. I personally, I don't like it. I'm a city person. I live in the city in St. Louis, and I know it's a little bit different here, but I like being in a city. I'm not really a suburban kind of person. I know everybody in the suburbs is like, yes, bring them out here to Arlington Heights because it'll be easier for us. But I like sports in a city. I think the backdrop of a football game with the lake in the background and the skyline right there, I think it's beautiful. And I love that atmosphere. But it's the smallest stadium in the NFL in terms of capacity. The third biggest market, smallest stadium. Like you can't have that. And there's only a limited amount of space they can build there. So, and they don't want to tear down the facade of Soldier Field like the original Soldier Field. So they can, I think what happened was when Virginia, and it probably goes beyond this, but when Virginia McCaskey, they went to the game in Dallas earlier in the year, I'm sure all of them, the Bears entourage, looked at that and said, we want one of these. Like, we got to have one of these stadiums. And with the space they're getting out in Arlington Heights, they could do that. There's plenty of space out there. They are closing on that land probably this year. And they pretty much said that in the press conference. So, in fact, I had two takeaways from the press conference. One of them was Olin Kreutz totally got dumped on. And the second one was, okay, I'm reading between the lines here. They are absolutely moving to Arlington Heights. Like, there's just, they said, hey, everything's on the table and we're still talking with the city about staying, but they're not staying. As soon as that lease is up, or if they can get out of it prior, they're gone. If they can build a shrine, when I said McCaskey went to Dallas, it was to the Rams building.
Okay.
Dallas, I'm sorry. They saw that brand new building in Inglewood out there, and they were like, we got to have that. So if they can build something like what LA has or what Dallas has, they're going to do it, and they'll do it as soon as they can.
And so now if you move them out right now, all the major teams are right there
in the city,
in that downtown city area. So if they move out there, I guess what Comiskey is, we know Wrigley, how old that is, but Comiskey's coming up on 30 some years since that was built. So would that be next to move out?
I don't know what they would do. So 1990, 1991, somewhere, it was one of those 2 years. I think it was 91 was their first year. So, they did a lot with renovating it. It's a nice building. It's nicer than when they built it. I don't know what they would do as far as leaving the city or that neighborhood. There was a time prior to 1990, I don't know if you remember this or not, but they had actually threatened to move to Tampa. And
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and it was the governor of, I think it was George Ryan at the time, I can't remember, who kind of stepped in and saved it. And I don't think it was Georgia. I don't remember who it was. Whatever the governor was, he stepped in and helped save the effort. But there was a plan in place, or at least that was being strongly considered, and they had plans drawn up to build it like not just in the city limits, but like downtown. There's a plot, the very south part of like the edge of downtown, the South Loop, right there. And now it's like a movie theater and a bunch of other stuff. But there was a plan to build a ballpark there, and I think that would have been awesome to do that. It seems like teams across the country are moving out into the burbs where they can have more space, because what do you want? You want to build the park, and then you want to build a ballpark village. Then you want to build stuff, or you want to do like what they've done at Wrigley, where Wrigley has bought the 2 blocks, essentially all the property on Clark and Addison right outside the ballpark, and they have just developed all of it. And it's stores that they charge rent to, and Starbucks and one of those baseballism stores, and apparel store like that. Got all this stuff that they're charging rent to these companies who are glad to pay it so they can be right across from Wrigley. And the same thing happens at Ballpark Village. So every team wants something like, they want a complex. They want the stadium, and then they want a complex that they own where people can hang out before and after. So ultimately, I could see the Sox moving out to the burbs. I think it'd be a very long time before the Bulls do. The Cubs are never going anywhere, probably. And that's the Blackhawks obviously would stay in the building they're in. So I don't think you would see any other team except for maybe the Sox.
And that's why I just don't know what the Bulls, Blackhawks. I don't know what the United Center situation is as far as how up to date it is. Because with that, it's weird because the United Center was opened a handful of years before a place like Staples Center. And Staples Center, they're not rebuilding anything like that. But when you think of that arena, that 20,000 seat arena in Chicago, it is the United Center, and it's going to be the United Center. And it doesn't seem like there's plenty of space as far as parking lots and stuff around United Center where they could just build a new one, knock down United Center, make that a parking lot, and they could just keep, moving it around from parking lot to parking lot for something like that.
Honestly, probably what they would do. There's just how much further west do you want to go? There's already all kinds of land there, and they own all of it. So I can't see them ever moving. And that building, I think, is mid-90s.
95 or 96, the SummerSlam, 95, I think, no, 94 SummerSlam, I think, was the first event held in the United Center.
Because that first run of Bulls championships, the first three, Pete, that was in the old building.
Yeah, and then the second 3 were in that one for that. I get it. And the thing that sucks about with Comiskey is there's just nothing around it. There's nothing there right now. But on that, I grew up in Lansing, and I grew up going to White Sox games as a kid. Okay. And going back there in, my college years, when I would go back up and go to a game, it sucked. I thought that was one of the worst stadiums I've ever been in. But the last 5 years going up there for games, they've done a lot of good stuff there to improve the experience. But you park or you get off the train and you go in. There's not a whole lot to do. And then this last summer, I went to one of the Cardinal Sox games there and went with some cousins, and they were like, okay, let's go to Cork and Kerry. Had no idea that there was a Cork and Kerry down the street from there now. Yeah. And it's not that big, but it's something. But that's it, really.
Yeah. It's like 10 years old. It used to be something. Jimbo's. That's what it used to be. And now it's Cork and Kerry. But it's all parking lots. And And then trust me, I like to go to the bar, man. I like the nightlife, and I worked there for 10 years, and they're just, other than going to Cork, which is like 2 blocks away, and they built that bar directly across the street that closes like a half hour after the game. There's that, and that's it. Like, there's nothing in that neighborhood. And a lot of Sox fans would push back and say, we don't need that. We don't need bars. And I used to say, yes, you do. Absolutely do. And the reason you do is because every other team is doing it, and the team that's just 8 miles north that you're competing with for eyeballs has that, and they got a lot of it. And people look at that and go, I want to go there. Like, I want to go to one of the 50 bars outside of Wrigley, and then go to a game and then go to the bars after or restaurants or whatever. Like, you do need that to compete, I think. So I heard there was a plan years ago that was taken to the team, and it would have been like a row of bars, and there were some developers that were interested, and the team said no, they don't. And this was like maybe, I don't know, 15 or so years ago. So I don't know if there's any interest in that, but maybe things change.
It goes back to just the people that are, run these billion-dollar corporations that just seem so clueless with some of the decisions that they make. I mean, that's just printing money right there, and they're saying no to it for who knows why. It's
funny because it makes me think of, did you watch Arrested Development?
Yeah.
All right. There's that scene where the mom, and like, they're super rich. These people are wealthy. And she says, "What could a banana cost, Michael? $10?" It's like she has no idea. Like, they just don't have any idea what the average person's life is like.
Hey, back to the Bears before we wrap this up here. Claibs and I got into this discussion on Monday, and I think it is Jim Harbaugh or bust for their next for the next head coach for them. Claibs disagreed with me on that. So who is right on who the Bears' next head coach is going to be, or who they're going to target first, I should say?
Well, I don't know who it's going to be. Harbaugh has been the name. I've joked about it. A lot of people have. Like, right around the beginning of the CFP, I thought, hey, this guy just lost. I guess now he can be the Bears coach. There are a lot of people who like him. I know Brian Flores is. They have interest in him. Leslie Frazier. Those two names are intriguing to me. Doug Peterson is a name that's been thrown out. That's not that intriguing. Like Dan Quinn, I don't know about that. And a lot of people like Byron Leftwich also. The reality is, you don't know what a coordinator is going to be as a coach until he does it. You can think, well, there's a lot of promise here, and I like this guy. But you don't know how he's going to handle head coaching duties, and that's what happened with Matt Nagy. He wasn't good at being a head coach. Maybe he will be down the line if he gets another opportunity, but right now he's just not. So I don't really know who it's going to be. What I do know is it doesn't need to be an offensive guy, or it doesn't need to be a defensive guy. It just needs to be a guy who can establish a culture that is supportive of their quarterback and knows how to delegate to the coordinators that he hires. Like, that's it. It can't be. One of the problems with Nagy was he insisted on play calling, and he's not a great play caller, especially while he's head coaching. Like, he's not good at doing both jobs. So whoever this person is that comes in just has to be able to delegate. And I don't care if they're defensive or offensive minded. They just need to foster Justin Fields. And I don't think it has to be an offensive guy to do that. Just has to be somebody who knows how to utilize the staff around him. And I think it's that simple. Which of those guys can do it? I don't know. I feel like Flores didn't get a very good shake in Minnesota, or not Minnesota, but in Miami. And apparently there were some conflicts behind the scenes there, maybe with he and the front office. So that might be why he's gone, and it surprised a lot of people. And it may not be him. Maybe it's just he couldn't work under the conditions that they set up for him. So I really don't know who I like here. I don't want to retread. So I don't want it to be, and I don't consider Flores a retread because he's only been around a couple of years, but somebody like Quinn, I'm not interested, or Peterson, I'm not interested. They're already using a guy who's like 85 to help them find, and it's not that an older person can't, be, have good ideas, but Bill Polian, who is assisting them in this search, said that Lamar Jackson should be a receiver. And so like, that's the advice we're taking from this gentleman who was good in the past, but he had Peyton Manning. No wonder he won back there in Indy. He had Peyton Manning. So I don't know. I want it to be somebody who helps Fields get better, and I don't know who that's going to be.
For as depressing as all the Bear stuff has been for Chicago fans, it has to be really exciting to watch this Bulls team play the way that they have been. I haven't been this excited to see them since the Derrick Rose days. So it is fun to see. How far do you think they can go?
I think they could win the East. They're probably not going to. I still think that's Brooklyn's conference to win. They could make it to a final, but DeRozan has to continue to play like this. I wonder how long he can keep it up, especially with the fourth quarter stuff, because he just turns it on in the fourth. I'm a little concerned about wearing down toward the end of the year. Not just him, but Levine as well. So that to me, those are the two main concerns, is like keeping those guys fresh and healthy all year. If they stay healthy, and I mean, they've already had the COVID issues this year. Hopefully that doesn't happen again to them, 4 months from now. If they can avoid all of that, I think they have a really good chance of getting to a conference final and maybe beyond that. Because you're right. It was when we figured out that Derrick Rose was awesome. And I think, obviously they lucked out getting that number one pick in the lottery. They had like a 1% chance of drawing the number one pick that year.
And it was a Chicago kid. It's funny how that works in the NBA.
Yeah. And one guy can turn a franchise around,
right?
And then he blows his knee out. And that was the end of that. But yeah, this is very, very exciting. It's not Jordan days exciting, but it's super fun to watch them.
The way the teams just kind of rotate. I mean, Boston had their run where all three teams were winning championships the same year. Tampa, they had the Buccaneers, the Lightning, and then the Rays were in the World Series. That just doesn't happen for all the Bears and Cubs tanking talk, and the Blackhawks are just not even relevant right now. And then you get, Tony La Russa leading the White Sox and the Bulls. And it's going to rotate again. That when this bull cycle ends, one of those other teams will be good then. And you can never get 3 or 4 of them going at the same time, it seems.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So the Blackhawks won their first championship in 2010. Both baseball teams not all that good. The Bears were okay. The Bears went to I think that was the year they went to the NFC Championship. So you had those two teams doing really well at once. But, sometimes both baseball teams are good at the same time. They're never going to have I've got friends who are from Boston, and I have said, if you're from Boston and you're like, I don't know, at least in your 20s, you never for the rest of your life get to bitch about your teams ever. Like, this is it. You can never complain about your teams anymore, because you have lived through 20 years of just straight excellence from everybody.
It is crazy. Chris, man, hey, thank you so much for taking this much time to just talk it out over the past half hour. I really appreciate it, and it's been a lot of fun.
You got it, Joe. Anytime you want me, I'm here.
Absolutely. That is Chris Rongey here on Weekend Joe, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, Mungenast Alton Toyota.
St. Louis Acura was the #1 Acura dealer in Missouri in 2021, and we were the 17th in the nation for Acura sales volume. We sell over 100 pre-owned vehicles monthly, and we service all of the makes and models that we sell. We are waiting for verification of our 30th Acura Precision Team Award, the only dealer in the nation with so many awards for customer satisfaction and dealership performance. We have 300 pre-owned vehicles in stock right now. St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.